Guests have been admitted. Ready when you are.
Okay, the YouTube live stream is just about to start.
Okay, am I good to go?
You're good to go, Michael.
All right. Thank you guys for your patience. Welcome to the June 20th, 2023 Design Review Board meeting. I am calling the meeting to order and establishing a quorum of 5 members out of our 9-person panel. We got a bunch of people traveling and not able to make it today. I have no opening remarks. I'm looking for an approval of tonight's agenda.
So moved.
There's a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All right.
Aye.
Motion passes. Staff, do I have any last meeting minutes to approve?
Yes, we have May the 16th, May 23rd, June 6th, and June 13th.
All right. Do I hear a motion to approve May 16th, May 23rd, June 6th, and June 13th meeting minutes?
So moved.
There's a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right. Motion passes. Now I'm looking for any general member comments that are not pertaining to any of the applications tonight. Any general member comments, just go ahead and raise your hand, virtually or physically. I don't see anybody. All right, we will jump into tonight's agenda. So up first, we have 11229 Leatherwood Drive. Is the applicant here or applicants?
I was not able to identify them. So if Sean or
I think Amir is on the call.
Yeah, I see an Amir.
asking to unmute.
Yes.
Hello.
Can you hear me? Good evening.
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome. So
Thank
if you could walk us through your application that we have here before us. I know we deferred it because there was just, it was a big enough application that we wanted to look at it as the full board. So if you could walk us through kind of what you're doing a bunch of stuff. So walk us through it all. And then we'll hear from the affected parties and then we'll come back to you with any questions. Okay.
Sure. Well,
Take it away.
yeah, this is the application for, there's an application for the fence, which that was passes from the neighbors, and I got all the signatures.
Staff, do we have a plat that has the actual fence on it?
So if you go to page, this is page.
Yeah, this is
Well, I guess so this is, oh, here we go. Yeah. Okay. So you're doing a fence.
yeah, because of the trees, I had to go to 60 feet that I am not cutting any trees over there with the adjacent neighbor. And I did only 60 feet, and then the remaining is going to continue to the border of my line before the county line and finish it over there.
Okay. Okay. All right. So and then you're also proposing it to be 4 feet high. It looks like.
Yes, what the
Pressure treated wood.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. So the fence, and then what else are you doing?
Yeah, it is the concrete around the house, existing house. and make the patios up to date.
Okay. So you're doing a 5-foot concrete sidewalk around the entire perimeter of the home,
Yes, that's correct.
and then upgrading the existing patios with
That's correct. Yes.
new concrete, or is there going to be stone on them?
Is it new concrete?
New concrete. Okay. And then what else are you doing?
It is a driveway. That was a footprint of the garage, existing garage, but the garage is no more available. And I'm gonna make it that area as shows on the map without garage.
Okay. So there was a garage and it's been torn down, or
I maybe is many years ago, probably it is more than 20 years, because I can see only the concrete footage of the garage, and the half it is filled with soil.
gotcha. Okay. So now, according to this graphic, it says you're going to be concreting the entire driveway as well to the street.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's
You're going to get
correct.
rid of all the asphalt and go to concrete.
Yes, because the trees, they made a lot of crack and gaps in the driveway.
Okay. And then what else are you doing?
Doing the windows, because windows are outdated. And I am making the new windows.
So the windows are just replacing the existing locations. Are you
That's
adding
correct.
any new locations, or just
No,
existing
just
windows?
existing, replaced with a new one.
Okay. Anything else?
That is another one.
It looks like you might be doing the front door. Is that accurate?
Yes, the front door. It is very old, and we're gonna do it the new one. But I send it the one door with the application that I have selected.
Yeah, staff slide 102. Yeah.
That's correct. Yes,
Okay.
I ordered prime. That's if you requesting any color, then I'm gonna get that color later on and paint.
Okay. And then I think the only other thing you have on here are tree removals.
Yes.
You want to walk us through those?
Yes. This is the one. It is cleaned yard. Yes, the area that I dotted, that is the footprint of the stems from the trees that we have to remove it in through the association. If is the stem, it is 2 feet and lower, we can clean up the yard, which we did it. And there's a lot of plants that is growing from nature everywhere, and we clean that area too. From the border of the county and the house, that was many trees falling and then was in the street, and they already was cut and dry, which we cleaned that area too. In the county member, they came over there and I explained to them, and they said it is okay. Just if it's more than 2,500 square foot, and I had to put a new plants.
Okay. And do you have, is there any sort of better, so it looks like you're proposing, I did see somewhat of a landscape plan for what you're proposing to put back, right?
Yes, that's correct.
I saw something somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah, that was in one for clean out and one for the application to put the new trees back over there.
Yeah, slide 95, staff.
Yes. Yeah, that is the one.
Okay.
This is a one a spring that I'm gonna put it in, coming from use the slope from the hill, and then planting some flower over there. And the name of the trees is with a mark with the color.
Okay. And so what, out of all of this, it seems like some of it is existing. So the tree removals or the kind of under clearing, that's existing. Is the fence existing?
No,
Or
the fence.
You haven't built the fence yet.
No,
Okay. So the only thing you've done so far, have you replaced the windows yet?
no.
Okay. So the only thing you've done so far is the tree clearing or the
Yes, that's
understory
correct.
clearing.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. I think that's everything I see in the application. There's some affected parties on the application. So let me hear from them, and then we'll go around and ask you any questions that we have after we hear from them. Okay, Hamir?
Sure, no problem.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Staff, do you have the affected parties and just overall affected parties? You have 3 minutes to state your affected party status, and staff will be kind of monitoring that. So keep that in mind when you're making your statement. So staff, if you want to go through the list of, I think there's at least 2, I think, from what I've read through. Might even be a third.
There's a third. Kathy, you're unmuted.
Okay, I'm here. Would you like me to speak now?
Yes, ma'am. Just a reminder that you have 3 minutes.
Okay. Since I submitted my statement before in writing, I hope that you will have read it. There are just a few points that I would like to go back to, which is I would like the woodland that was behind my fence restored. That was a natural woodland that had been grown since the time that Mr. Zeman bought the house, which is 1970. And many of those trees were taken down. All the understory was removed, and the ground was stump ground. I do not want a fence across my backyard. I don't want a fence down, what's her name, Catherine Rosen's, that will block my view. Right now it's summertime, but we only have summertime for a few months. The rest of the year, it's quite bare around here, and that will block my view, and it will not be pleasant for me. There is issue of erosion in the berm along the VDOT and the county easements along Leatherwood. That was not addressed by covenants. I hope that the DRB will consider doing something, especially about the very steep area and about 50 to 75 feet closest to Patty Rutter's yard. I'm concerned about the addition of cement to the yard, which will involve more water washing down into the drain, which Lou and I are responsible for the drain because the way things work. And if the pipe under our driveway gets blocked up with debris, we have to take care of it. And VDOT does not always come out. The last time the Foxfire Court drain backed up, it was flooded there for 2 weeks. So this is an issue. This is a long-term issue. And so those are my 4 things. I want to restore the natural areas, especially the one behind my house, which was a natural area with many trees that were left there by the builder. I don't want a picket fence on my property line. I do not want someone to ignore this mess that you can see right here, this very steep berm. And I'm concerned about the amount of cement that is being proposed. And I will add that there was not, since I've lived here, a garage in this property. So I don't know where that comes from. And perhaps Mr. Mayor doesn't understand that that cannot be used to store recreational vehicles like boats or RVs in Reston, if that's his intention. So that's pretty much it, the short version. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Lashonda, who's next? Lashonda, you there?
Yes, I'm sorry. It just cut out for a second. Patricia Ruther, if you are present, could you please raise your hand? If you're dialing in by phone, if you can dial *6 to unmute yourself. I don't see any hands raised. And then Lois Doré. If you are present, if you can raise your hand. No, I don't see any hands raised.
Okay. If anyone's here as an affected party, please raise your hand if we didn't call on you.
Association is an affected party.
Okay. Cam, you want to take your 5 minutes?
I would. I'm Cam Adams, the Director of Covenants Administration, and on behalf of Reston Association's Board of Directors, I filed an affected party statement. Anna Rosa, could you zoom into that bottom part? I'm just going to read what was written. Thank you. The DRB is encouraged to request the applicant to provide additional information related to the concrete work around the house and the driveway. The application does not provide details on the style type of concrete application that will be installed. Additionally, there are concerns related to impervious materials being installed on the property given the significant amount of vegetation removal on the property. If the patio and other elements are approved, considered, the owner should be requested to provide a detailed drainage plan addressing the runoff from the home to include identifying location of downspouts and extensions prior to receiving final approval. Regarding the tree removals, the applicant should be encouraged to replace a significant, if not 1-to-1 ratio, number of trees replaced on the property to encourage the original canopy of the property. Additionally, the owner should provide a substantial amount of plantings within his property line along the top slope on Leatherwood Drive to assist in reducing any detrimental drainage to the adjacent sloped area owned by the county, in which the owner removed a significant amount of understory. It should be noted that there was no garage ever on this property. As well as the area that is sloped towards Leatherwood Drive is not owned by the property owner, and therefore the DRB nor the Covenants Committee can require replacement of materials as that area is not currently, or there's a complex regulation under any property owned by any property owned in an easement by either Fairfax County or VDOT as it relates to being subject to Reston's protective covenants. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, let me go around. If you guys could unmute the applicant, I'm going to go around and see if anyone has any questions for him. Let's start off with Mike B. Did you have any questions for the applicant?
I don't have any specific questions at this point, Michael. I guess I kind of echo some of the sentiments that were just presented by Cam in terms of additional details for some of the components of the application. curious to see what other details are going to kind of get flushed out in this discussion. The fence itself, did I miss detailing with regard to the fence components itself? Was it?
I think it's just a 4-foot high picket
Okay.
style fence. Yeah.
Okay. Left to weather naturally. That's the plan.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
correct.
Okay. Yeah, that was the only thing I saw. I didn't know if we had, detailing in terms of what the top looked like, or any additional detailing with regard to the fence would be preferable. Certainly something I would have looked for in terms of details for this thing. So that's got one thing for me. Obviously, there are other concerns in here, but that's my first question, Michael. I'll keep my powder dry for a little bit later.
Okay. Brian, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Yes, I do. I guess to follow up on the fence question, I guess I was curious, at least just about the purpose of the fence, because it doesn't look like it fully encloses the yard. So I was curious about where it stopped and where it started, and really what was it? What was its purpose?
Yeah, may I speak?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
The border at the front, it is the street. I don't need to put a fence. And that area that I am putting fence, because I want to just outline my property to make a plant or other stuff, which other neighbors, they did also fences. The person, the lady that talked regarding the she doesn't want to have a fence. She has the 6 feet tall fence, and they had a lot of trees that she cut it and put the grass on her yard. I don't know why he's complaining about 4 feet fence that is obstructed her view. That is little bit not acceptable, that she has a 6 feet tall privacy fence between her and the neighbor. I think is the Patricia, Kathy, and I cannot have my 4 feet. It is regulated by the association, and also it is bordering my line of the property.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions, Brian?
Yes, sorry, a couple more.
Yep, no, go
Just
for
trying
it.
to run down the list here. So in terms of the concrete walk pad that you want to install around the perimeter of the house, I guess I'm just wondering if you've considered any alternatives to that, because I'm not sure if I understand its purpose. It seems a little bit out of place, kind of with the surroundings, and I'm wondering if there was something different that could be done, like putting a strip of gravel down or something like that, if it was about water management and then rounding that out with plants as opposed to concrete. So I'm wondering if you considered any other alternatives to this concrete walkway?
I sent 2 emails, probably because of yesterday holiday, they didn't come to your meeting. The soil grow up so far that the plant came in my house. I have to remove the walls and take everything from inside. The plant, all the grass and soil came up to above the siding area, which they let all the animals, mice and everything coming in my house. I have to remove insulation to remove these pests out of my house right now. And everything is gonna start rotting. That is why I need a 5% slope away from the house, which is not possible, because if I am doing that way, then I have to dig it down from the soil.
I guess I'm a little concerned about in terms, I guess in same maybe as as the fence, I would maybe want a few more details on the concrete in terms of kind of the finish, color, stuff like that, especially since there's could potentially be so much of it, and especially as it goes out to the driveway and meets the street and things like that. I do think we're short a few details on that. I'm hoping we may be able to get some more information on that, but we can table that for a second. I guess maybe my last question has to do with the tree removals, and on this plan, I guess where it says lot 12, so we're behind your house and between, I guess, the affected party who spoke earlier. Why were all those trees cut down?
The trees wasn't cut down. That was the previous, I had a photos that I had a one truck full of the rotted stem of the trees and the branches, and also the English ivy and poison ivies that we had to remove it from the trees. And still it is some dry trees that I didn't cut that one because it was taller than 2 feet. And the county came over there for inspection. They said, why you didn't cut these trees while you had an opportunity to clean up? I said, because that was taller than 2 feet. The affected party that she's talking about removing, we removed all dry branches that was cutting from previous trees that was also some of them probably come from the big tree from her side. That was about 2 feet stem that she cut in her property.
I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm following the explanation, just because I guess we're seeing a lot of photos. I'm trying to find the right ones to look at. Like, I guess what are before and after photos that look like, at least in your backyard, really quite changed from what I guess was really well screened between you and the neighbor behind you, and that now it looks fairly. I do see some trees remaining, but it does feel fairly leveled, and kind of a big reduction in privacy back there that I'm concerned about.
Yeah, those are the ones. Those are the ones. Is that what you're talking about, Brian? Where it's sort of clear cut? Yeah.
Yeah. It looked like some of those were in the backyard. Now that front berm.
That was a winter. And in winter, most of the bushes was dry. Right now, if you're coming, it's gonna look exactly this pictures that you had before.
Based on your landscape plan that you submitted. Is that what you mean? Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
No, go ahead.
I just was going to ask of staff. I mean, this property just recently traded hands earlier this year. So, do we have? Are these the pictures from the resale that we're looking at right now?
No, they're the photos from an active complaint to the Covenants Committee. And so, just so you're aware, the Covenants Committee did review a complaint submitted by one of the affected parties, and the affected the part of the issue was that we were able to confirm at least 15 trees were removed from the property.
Gotcha. That were bigger than the 2-inch, or were somewhat flowering, or if they're a flowering type or whatever, it would require an application.
That is correct.
Okay. Is that across the entire property, Cam?
Yes, that is for his entire property, not along the berm.
Well, and the covenants make a determination of if this was a natural wooded area. Because I mean, I would assume that is the also definition of where they are. At least
so
in my
covenants
opinion.
actually didn't review the removal part since that's a design violation. There were other things that were of an issue that the Covenants Committee did review.
Gotcha. Okay.
Cam, can you help me understand the berm situation on Leatherwood? What I think one of the last things you said was this very steeply sloped hillside where so many trees have been cut down. That's not the applicant's property?
This is a great image. So halfway through this slope, the top half belongs to the homeowner.
Mhm.
The bottom half to the street belongs to VDOT and the county.
Who cut the trees down?
The homeowner did.
Thank you.
And the reason why I was asking if there was any pictures from the previous when the house was sold was because if you look at a lot of the pictures, some of the trees still show like the ivy, the invasive ivy all over the trees. And you know, we do allow ivy removal as part of removing. So I just wanted to kind of clarify what was invasive back there. Was there any sort of you know, obviously there probably was no arborist or anybody who actually went and looked at it. But I just was curious if we actually had pictures from that sale, if we could kind of try to determine if what was back there was invasive. And obviously the stuff is gone, so it's going to need to be. It's just a matter of you know, what gets replanted and how do we kind of bring this back to its natural wooded area state. But I kind of want to make sure all the ivy's gone, so that way it doesn't just happen again with ivy suffocating everything out. So that's all. I was wondering if there was any other pictures that we had pre-complaint from the sale of the property, but not too big of a deal. We can just make it a note. Emily, did you have any questions for the applicant?
Hey, Michael.
I do. Cam, you want to go first?
Sorry, I misspoke. The photos on the screen are from prior to the owner's purchase.
These are okay. So what slide is this?
I couldn't see
80,
the 22
80?
part.
Okay, 80. Okay, thank you. I'll look through these and then in the next 1 minute. Emily, go ahead.
So I had a couple of things I wanted to echo the concerns about the fence detailing and the concrete around the house foundation. I definitely concerns about the amount of impervious surface that is being added to the property, in addition to the amount of vegetation removal and overall clearing. Was there a disturbance permit, land disturbance permit received for this clearing and removal?
I think the county said that he didn't need it because he was under 2,500 square feet.
Well, the 2,500 square feet is 2,500 square feet of disturbance, which includes landscaping. So to be clear, what we have seen in these photos it looks like the entire yard has been disturbed. In addition to, you know, vegetation removal, adding in the amount of concrete that the applicant is looking to add in may well be the 2,500 square foot allowance in and of itself before they would need to seek approval from the county. So from what I'm seeing, not only do we need a landscaping plan, but this should have had at least a land disturbance permit, if not I don't think they would have needed a grading plan, but this amount of clearing and removal, if you're going down to bare earth and not reseeding or creating some sort of stabilization for the soil, does count as disturbance. So I'm a little concerned, I think, as my colleagues are, about the amount of erosion that is now a possibility on this property with the tree removal, the amount of impervious surface added, and the amount of land disturbed on the site, not to mention the future construction. So there's a lot of things that I'm not seeing that I would want to see on a project of this scale.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. All I was saying is that he was saying the county said he didn't need one for what he had done so far. So not saying it's not required, but with all that concrete, it more than likely will be required by the county, but unfortunately, we don't enforce what they submit to the county. We can only enforce what they submit to us. Bruce, do you have any questions for the applicant?
No, I just would to echo that without details of the fence, the walkway, the concrete drive, and the drainage, we wouldn't be in a position to, it seems to me, to address this application.
I don't have any questions for the applicant, but I want to kind of separate some things out just so we can go about this easily organized. So the windows, from what I see, the window replacements, I don't have any issues with the type of window and what they're replacing. It's almost a like for like replacement. So that to me is not going to be a piece of concern. The front door, I don't necessarily think it goes with the style of architecture, but we've been lenient in front doors because it's kind of an expression that the homeowner can take. And so I'm not going to push back on those two items. What I am going to push back on is the concrete. We've had applications like this before where people just want to do it on the side of their house, let alone all the way around the perimeter. I don't think it's a successful way to do drainage. You're going to have to disturb earth anyways to put in the concrete. So to use that as an excuse necessarily for why you can't slope the grade away is not really adequate. The 5 foot walk around is not going to be set within the perimeter. It's not something that's going to be conducive to this area, to the style of the surrounding yard. So that walkway is doesn't fit in our guidelines, and it's not going to happen for what it needs. And there needs to be a different solution submitted for that. The fence also does not meet our guidelines in the sense that the neighbors are not agreeing to it. It's not in the backyard. It seems like it's part in the left side yard, and it's kind of, I know this is a unique property, but that kind of is the front yard from where the front door is. The backyard is actually along Leatherwood. And there's actually another property that has a split rail fence that you can kind of see in the bottom left corner of this, has kind of already set the precedent for a split rail fence in the neighborhood, which our guidelines also want to enforce, that you stick with the similar style fencing in the neighborhood, which in this instance would be split rail. So a split rail fence would be what would need to be proposed in kind of a new location. Would also kind of need to take kind of the landscaping plan with the trees. I mean, that's a whole issue. I think we're going to have to come up with a plan on how to reestablish the tree in natural wooded area. I mean, it's definitely been impacted, and there was some invasive species. So some of that was okay, but some of it was obviously not okay after the complaint was investigated, and 15 trees were at a minimum determined to be not properly approved to be removed. So we'll need to find a way. I did want to talk to Emily about the replanting plan. Do you think the plants that they're proposing, are those all native species and are kind of what you would find in a wooded area? I don't recognize some of them, and if they would necessarily be the typical trees you would be planting. Did you have a chance to look at that?
Can we pull the planting plan back up? Yes. I did notice that they had fig trees which are fruiting. There are that is not a native species.
Slide
It's not
95,
invasive.
Seth.
Yeah, it's not an invasive species, but it's not a native one. The Japanese pieris is again also not native but not invasive. The mountain snow pieris, and it just has 6 flowering trees. So obviously we need a species, and we don't have any size category on this for what we would need. Lilac is going to depend on the species. There are Korean lilacs, there are Chinese lilacs, there are native Virginia lilacs, but again, we need more detail on exact species to know whether these would be approvable or not.
Okay. I mean, I like the quantity that's going back. I think, there's enough. I just don't know enough about some of these trees, like the fig tree as an example. Is that much more of an ornamental tree, Emily, versus is that like going to do well in an understory environment that it now is going to, because basically we're trying to put back that understory that's disappeared. So is that an understory tree? Emily, you still here?
I'm not seeing Emily.
I know our tree expert disappeared.
Your quorum also disappeared.
Yeah. What do I need to do here? Tony, are you on?
Well,
Briefly, we're gonna briefly adjourn to try to let her get back on.
Okay. Sorry, guys. We're gonna have to pause the meeting for our quorum to come back.
May I ask one question?
We unfortunately right now we can't conduct any business without our quorum. So
Okay.
give it.
Need a mo-
We just have to wait for her to come back, and then you can speak, Amir. Sorry.
A question of the chair. Do you need a motion for us to temporarily adjourn, or are we just remaining civil?
Yeah.
We're adjourned by mechanic.
Default.
By mechanics. Fair enough. Just didn't want to make Tony mad. That's all.
We appreciate that.
Can we put the break slide up, please?
Emily, you back?
I am. I'm so sorry about that. My technology died.
No, you're good. We had to pause because we only have 5 members. So
I am so
We
yeah. I
stopped-
am so
we
sorry.
stopped
I'm
right-
back. I'm here.
So what I was asking was about the nativeness and the understory capability of the trees along the like Leatherwood Drive as an example, with fig trees, persimmon trees, and that mountain snow pier. Are those understory trees that would be able to do well in that environment, or do we need to work on that that understory they're promoting to put back?
So the persimmons are native and perfectly fine. The fig, lilac, and mountain snow pieris are not native, but they are not invasive. So and they're understories that I wouldn't have any inherent issue with. But I'm also concerned that it just has flowering trees down at the bottom and doesn't have any a description of that. So we also I think we need some species listed of what we're actually looking at here. Because there's different cultivars, like a lilac could be a Korean lilac, which is sort of invasive, but there's also non-invasive varieties. So we definitely need some specificity with the application if it were to go forward.
Okay. And then the applicant, Amir, you had something that you wanted to say? Could you guys unmute him? Might be muted.
Can
There
you
you
hear
go,
me?
Amir. Yep, now we can hear you.
Okay.
ahead.
Regarding the fence, I talked to my neighbors, and the neighbors, they have already the fence She wants to remove that fence and put this similar continue line as I am putting in. So she asked me if I can tell my contractor to remove that section, and then continuously is going to be 4 feet that is give better look for her house, where this area.
Okay. And this is the fence at the lower left-hand corner of this plat, where it says
Exactly.
fence, where it says fence start, the current split rail fence. She's saying they're going to replace all of their fence with the split rail, or just the
Yes,
portion?
yes, 4 feet similar. That means my contractor helped her to remove this part, and then this fence is going to be new between both of us,
Okay.
both neighbors.
Staff, do we have signatures from all the direct neighbors? It looks like there's 1, 2, 3 neighbors for this fence to be going on the property line, because that's also a guideline requirement if it's going to be going on the property line.
Yes, I got all the also the person, she said she doesn't want to have the fence. She signed it that the 4 feet fence is going to be okay.
Well, yeah, the problem with our application is that our application isn't necessarily an approval from neighbors, it's just a notification. So with the uniqueness with the fence is that they actually need to sign off on a shared maintenance agreement for having a fence put on the property line.
Okay.
Which is a little bit different than our application is just a notification. So staff, do you know if those have gone out? I don't know the exact addresses.
So Patricia is to what would be the lot 11, which is adjacent.
Is that 11233?
That's
11225.
so we do have the neighboring signatures.
And you have
But we don't have it.
11233?
Yes, so these two are his adjacent neighbors directly.
Well, it looks like there's three. There's 3 that are affected.
11223. We do have that. That's going to be on page 6. So that's Kathy. We do have the
And then-
signatures.
Okay, but do you know if there's a shared maintenance agreement?
There's no shared maintenance agreement.
Okay. Okay. That would be one thing, that if it is going to go on the property line, that this is just a notification.
Okay.
Just because they signed it doesn't mean that it's necessarily they're okay with a fence going on their property line, because at the end of the day it's a shared right. So our guidelines, if you look at them, you can set it back 8 feet and not need any neighbor approval, or you can work somewhere in the middle and still need to get neighbor approval, but you don't need neighbor approval, you just need our approval, and you don't need a shared agreement if it's not on the property line. So some people will set it back a foot, some people will set it back 2 feet, just whatever they need to get in there to maintain it themselves. Just as a kind of a clarification.
I have other question too.
Mhm.
Because you regarding around the house, the soil is really came up and past the line of the siding. How I can protect my house from all the water coming right now towards the house, and already did the damages. And that is why I thought it's better to put a concrete, and then they let them the water go around the concrete paths, not around the house.
Yeah, unfortunately, concrete's not going to stop water. So the issue is that you need to talk with either a landscape architect or somebody similar who can give you a way to properly regrade this thing, and or provide surrounding plantings, gravel. Some people will do mulch beds that will have drainage. There might be lots of different ways that you can handle it. Based on the topo, it looks like the lot kind of slopes from, I guess, top to back, from that front corner where you want to do the pond where you want to do the koi pond in the river, it slopes from that area to the street.
That's right.
And so there may be some different ways that they can, design some sort of perimeter around the house to do it. We're here to approve stuff. We're not here to design it for you. But the big thing is the concrete is just not going to be allowed with our guidelines. It's not cohesive with the surrounding area, and it's not set into the natural grade of the land. You're kind of, adding impervious area where it's not necessarily needed. You wanting to concrete the driveway that's existing, that's there, perfectly acceptable, right? That's fine. But the actual increasing of all of that surrounding area, I think there's some better ways that we can handle it. Because what that limits is, yes, it limits the plants that can get into your house, but then it also limits the amount of natural area that you've left now around the house, which is kind of the intent when this house was built, was to leave a natural wooded area around it and preserve it. And unfortunately, that's kind of been part of it's been removed, whether it was due to invasive stuff or partially by just overgrown, shrubbery that we're going to try to look to put back to try to, maintain that natural environment. So,
how about the existing patio, because it's all damaged and cracked?
So like the existing patio, if you want to replace that, with the impervious concrete, that's 100% fine. It's just the walkway around the entire house is just not going to be able to work out that way. But existing patios that you have already, if you had a front sidewalk, right, that you wanted to replace, to make that, you could definitely, those would definitely be acceptable means in solutions.
Okay, not around the house then.
But just not around the house. Yeah,
Okay.
I would recommend, maybe some decorative gravel, some mixture of gravel and mulch or something that's going to help keep and then maintain a grade away from your house, but also help do what you want to do with still aesthetically being pleasing for the surrounding area.
Okay, sounds
good. Let's go into discussion between members now. So, Brian, did you have any thoughts on how you want to approach part of the application?
I didn't. I think we're going to have to go point by point.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything else to say before we do that? Does anyone want to make any other statements or thoughts or comments?
I'm with you, Michael. I didn't have any issue with the windows or the door in the grand scheme of things. The rest of it, I think, needs further study and additional details before I'm comfortable rocking and rolling.
Okay.
I'm in the
Emily,
same
what were
boat.
you gonna say?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. The windows and doors, no issue with, but definitely need to see an amended landscaping plan, different solution for the foundation, and not increasing the impervious surface on the property. So yeah, I think we need a lot more detail, but no issues with the windows and doors as is.
Okay. Well, let's split it up then. What I'll do is I'll make a motion to approve the window and door portion of the application as submitted.
I'll second.
So there's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on that? All right. So all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 All right. Motion passes 5-0. All right. So that portion's out. So we're good there. So the fence, does anyone want to make a motion on the fence or the landscaping? Maybe I think we should. Let me hear what you guys have to say. I think there's a consensus on what we need to do, but somebody can make a motion.
I move to deny the application.
Okay, there's a motion.
I have a point of clarification. You mean the remainder of the items on the application?
Correct.
Emily?
Yeah, we've already approved the windows and the doors.
So the fence, the tree removals, the landscaping plan, the walkway, the patio, and the driveway extension, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, at the moment. Hold on, LaShonda. Is there any is there a second of the motion?
I'll second it.
Or a suggestion?
I'll
The only thing I would
second it.
suggest, the only thing I would
Chad.
suggest is that we defer it, not deny it, to give the applicant time for further study. I think everything that he's wanting to do, we can find a way to make it happen. I think denying it is just going to restart the whole process, which I don't know if it necessarily does any good for anybody, considering it's an active, kind of site, so to speak, with no ground cover. So, would you guys be open to deferring the application so they could do restudy, and then we can give some suggested things to look at?
Yes, I would be open to amending my motion to defer.
I'd agree.
Okay.
I concur.
Okay. So if it's a deferring, I think we then need to just kind of lay out a couple things that they should, I know we've already said it, but if Emily, if you want to lay out exactly kind of what they should defer or restudy.
Absolutely. So with the deferred application, we would like to see an amended landscaping plan to include exact species, quantities, and size as installed, with an emphasis on native species and understory trees to help restore the canopy that has been removed, as well as ground cover plantings to help prevent erosion in the future. For the concrete areas, we would definitely like to see an alternative for the concrete around the foundation that would be non-impervious, perhaps something like a river rock or a mulch, and not increasing the impervious lot coverage that is already on site in terms of the driveway expansion. With the fence, we would like to see more detail about the just more details on the fence, including materials and kind of top conditions and overall details for the fence. I think that is it. Am I missing anything?
No, but hold that right there. Oh, Mike, do you agree with that real quick, just for
The existing tree removals as well?
He's shaking his. Yeah. Oh, hold on, Tony. Did you have something to say before we get through all this? Are we doing something wrong?
Yeah, I believe my speakers must have cut out, but what I think happened for the minutes purposes is the movement and the second agreed to withdraw their original motion, made a second motion to defer. Is that what happened?
That's exactly what happened.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. So Mike, you agreed with Emily's statements, and then LaShonda had a question about, so you need some further clarification on what we're suggesting about the trees, LaShonda?
I got the landscaping portion. Aside from that, was the tree removals, the existing tree removals.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, they're gone, so there's not really much we can recommend except a better, landscaping plan, which I think is what Emily referenced.
Correct. We would like a landscaping plan that would seek to restore the canopy coverage that was removed without approval.
And I think the plan submitted is let's say 50% the way there. It just needs a little bit more detail on some of the things, like a flowering tree. We just need a little bit more detail. We need to know more of the caliper of size of the plants that are going back. And anything else, Emily, you think? Any other like ground cover? Like there's a lot of just dirt, all over the back. Like I think that needs to all be stabilized somehow.
Correct. Soil stabilization measures should be part of the landscaping plan, including things like seed and straw or planting of ground covers. But yes, soil stabilization as part of the landscaping plan with, species, exact species, size calipers, and quantities.
Okay. Mike, you agree with that?
I do, sir. I do.
Okay. And then only one other point of clarification on the fence portion. I would still argue that the fence location is not in accordance with our guidelines, and that fences are supposed to be used very limiting in front yards. And right now, and I know this lot is a little bit weird with how it's shaped, so I think it's definitely unique. So I think we could get around that, but I do think investigating kind of the necessity because it's not really enclosing a yard for any certain reason. It's really just being put up for some sort of privacy, to maybe recommend that if privacy is the concern of the applicant, that maybe in looking at a landscaping hedge of some sort might be a better option that's evergreen in manner and could kind of do better at screening the perimeter properties rather than a permanent fence, just as an option to look at, especially in where the fence is in a location that is not usually in accordance with our guidelines, like the front yard. Emily, does that make sense?
That does make sense.
Mike, do you agree with that as well for the motion?
Concur.
Okay.
And
All right.
Mike,
Does everyone understand the motion? Oh, Cam?
because there's an active non-compliance issue, there is a timeline that needs to be attached to this to come back.
Gotcha. Let's see an application in 60 days.
Going back to full board.
Emily, do you agree? Or you set a timeline, Emily. You know how long something like this may take for design purposes.
I think to have 60 days would be sufficient for a revised application.
I agree.
Okay. And yes, LaShonda, full board. All right. Does everyone understand the motion? All right. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Motion passes 5-0. All right. Thank you. Moving on to application G, 1591 Regatta Lane.
The applicant is on and I'm asking you to unmute, Ian. Ian, you are unmuted.
Yes.
All right, welcome back.
Thank you.
So I think we deferred this to allow us to kind of go check it out at night, and also get a little bit more information on all the lights, from like a size, color, temperature, all that fun stuff. So if you want to walk us through what you submitted, and then we can you can hear from the affected parties, and then we can come back and ask any questions. Okay.
Excellent. Perfect. So what I did, in addition to the photographs that I sent to Richard in December with my, sorry, can you go back to the first slide, LaShonda? Great. So I added a number of photographs to see to show the difference between what the property looks like in December and what it looks like in May. So the photographs at the top, the thumbnails up there, kind of clearly show how a number of the lamps are shaded from the inside of the property by the plantings. I think in the appeal statement that the board gave said that I'd maintained that none of these lamps could be seen from the outside, which I absolutely did not say, because the photographs prove that, you know, the lamps can be seen from outside the property, but a number of them are obscured by plantings. So if we can step down and look at that photograph, the larger, darker photograph, what we're looking at there is my driveway from the garage looking out onto the side of my property on Regatta Lane. And if you look at the properties opposite and look at the lights on the garage on those two properties, those are two 800 lumen bulbs. And if you look at the front of the property of the one that's directly, you know, in line with my drive, that's another 1600 lumens of illumination. So between those three lights, there's 4800 lumens of glare. The entirety of my project adds 128 lumens. Each of those lamps are 8 lumens. They're set as per the agreement that the DRB panel to distribute these lamps pretty well evenly around my property. They're all set around about 9 feet apart. And as I say, the 16 8-lumen lamps add up to 128 lumens. So I'm struggling to see how that could possibly cause glare or have a material impact on anybody. The other thing I'd point out is that in the appeal statement, the board said that I'd knowingly misrepresented that the project had started. And they looked at my application and we've had communications. How anybody could interpret that my project hadn't started and that I knowingly misrepresented that to the board is just floors me. Because if we go to the, oh, actually, one more thing is if you look at the light field from those 1600 lumen lamps, it's probably around about 100 feet. If you look at the lamps, the two straight in front of you there, you can see most of the light is downwards because these are hooded. The lamps on the property, the building attached lamps are not hooded, and that's why you've got that upward illumination. And I'll point you to the lamp on the left side of the driveway. Can you see any downward illumination? There isn't any because it's been swamped by the 1600 lumens of light coming from my porch lights. So again, you know, to me, I'm baffled how anybody could describe those lamps as, you know, having glare. So if we can move to the next slide, LaShonda. So I'll say there were in total, there were 17 misrepresentations of what I actually put in my application and what I said to the DRB panel who unanimously approved the application. So first off, the applicants are my wife and I. So they're claiming that my wife and I knowingly misrepresented information to the DRB. I clearly checked the box to say, is this an existing project? It was an existing project because we'd installed 6 of the 16 Harlow lights. I think it was around about September. So we were in compliance with the Reston guideline for decorative lighting. They also said that I misrepresented the completion date of the project and the project had been completed months before. We didn't order the last 4 lights of the 16 until the 26th of January, and I didn't install them until early February. So there is no way that we misrepresented the completion date of the project because it was early February. I took a guess. When we filled out this application, it was November the 28th, the day after a board meeting, where a deadline for submission of the application was set for December the 15th. I completed this application, as I say, on November 28th, taking a guess of how long this process would take. So you can understand my frustration that we're sitting here in June, still talking about 16 8-lumen lights. The other thing I said in the application, and it's clear, it's written there clearly, that they are solar-powered mushroom lights. And I think it was Brian who said he was familiar with these kind of lights. And they don't hold that 8 lumens for more than a couple of hours. The complete battery gets drained down in 5 or 6 hours if you're lucky. And, you know, apart from the first 2 hours of illumination, that 8 drops to, you know, 6, 2, and there's just a faint glow for a substantial part of the last. I mentioned in my application is minimal glare. There's minimal glare because these lamps are hooded and they cast the light downwards. I sent you the spec of the lights in my original application. The board also made some very strange comments about that I took lights in, I put lights out, I did this, I did that. The true story is that we had 20 older solar lights in place for 6 years and received not a single complaint from anybody. So one of the things that, you know, we're going to focus on here is the concept of material impact, because my understanding of somebody signing on as an affected party, they had to demonstrate material impact. And I'm still confused as to what the material impact is of my 16 8-lumen, total of 128 lumens mushroom lights on. And as I say, the project was completed. We took a guesstimate of when the project would complete. Next slide, please. But just some points for consideration, because I've been racking my brain as to why we're actually here discussing my 16 8-lumen lights, and I understand the application process, but I mean, just on a review, I think there's dozens of hardwired path light configurations and projects that have been approved by the DRB, which clearly means that there were more than 6 lights in the guideline. And in terms of the impact on the environment, we're talking about thousands of lumens. Lamps that have got 600 lumens. In fact, the first DRB panel meeting I attended, there was a discussion of a project that was literally thousands of lumens. Those lamps that you saw on the external, on the outside of the properties there, if you add up all of those lights, it comes to a total of 128,000 lumens. And they are on for the whole time of darkness within our community. So again, I've got 128 lumens. They're on for a few hours. They're hooded. And we in our community have got 128,000 lumens worth of light that's on throughout the whole hours of darkness. Now, the other assumption I make is that for all of those projects in 1 and 2, there may have been some affected parties, but they were proven not to be materially impacted, and that all appeals were not upheld. In other words, these projects, in order for them to be completed, they must have passed those 2 gates. So the other thing that I was looking at in terms of the upholding of the appeal was that, you know, the 2 grounds on which an appeal can be upheld is, one, that the project changed, and nobody argued that my project had changed. So it must have been that there was a misinterpretation of the guidelines by the DRB panel. So, I mean, I've looked at the guideline many, many times, read it many times, and I'm still baffled as to why there's a guideline that says you can only have 6 mushroom lights. And I can explain this, you know, credulity by the fact that I'm aware of a complaint in our community of somebody's decorative lights, and it wasn't me. It was somebody else in the community. The resolution to that problem was to replace 6 mushroom lights with 6 uplights. So the total number of lumens didn't change. All that changed was the number of mushroom lights for uplights. So, I mean, to me, if the grounds for, you know, approving or not approving is based on what appears to be a very arbitrary number, it's obviously not based on glare, 128 lumens versus thousands. It's not an objective measure of nuisance, because I haven't heard anybody describe to me what nuisance my or our lights are having. And it can't possibly be on the size of the property, because there's no reference to size of property. So somebody living on a postage stamp is allowed 6, and somebody living on a multi-acre property are allowed 6. So, I mean, it just doesn't seem to make sense anyway. So what we do know is that when the panel met and reviewed my application, they unanimously concluded, I think, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, that there was no material impact proven, and therefore they accepted and approved our application. So, you know, I think where I'm kind of going now is, you know, if the DRB panel accepted it, they kind of interpreted the guideline that goes beyond that 6, because they gave approval for 16. it does look as if that 6 is purely arbitrary. So moving on to the appeal statement, as I mentioned, there's 17 false representations in that appeal statement. When Linda Holkauer came to present her appeal statement, she was asked by you, Michael, or instructed by you, Michael, that she had to follow the 2 criteria for an appeal. One is the project changed, the design changed, or secondly, that the DRB panel had misinterpreted the guideline. In her actually verbal appeal, she didn't present the 17 false representations in her appeal statement. She presented an appeal on behalf of Reston, and that somehow my 128 lumens was going to destroy the very fabric of Reston. Now, what I'm pointing to here is, and my understanding of the process is, Reston Association always reserves the right to sign on as an affected party and be heard at a DRB panel meeting or a full DRB meeting. At the DRB panel, there was no affected party statement put forward by Cam or Rashonda or any other of the Covenant staff. So I think I can assume from that they didn't feel at that time that Reston Association was materially impacted. So to me, that's kind of proof that the material impact is only being perceived by Newport Cluster Association. So the slide we're looking at here is in 2010, 2011 timeframe, approval was given for that new design of lights, which if you look at it, compare that to the lights on the left, on the right. The ones on the right are hooded. We actually added unhooded lights, which creates greater glare, greater environmental impact. And the other thing that we did was we added a double bulb fixture instead of a single bulb. So if you add up the impact of that, we went from, if everybody switched on their lights, we had a total in the community of about 108,000 lumens if everybody switched them on. By giving this approval, it added another potential 50,000 lumens. Now, I went around and did a quick count around the community, and we haven't, not everybody has replaced the old fixtures with the new. So the total comes out around about that 128,000 lumens. So again, I'm looking for somebody to try and explain to me how you can compare 128 lumens and consider they're creating glare where 50,000 lumens doesn't. It doesn't add up. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Next slide, please. So this is part of the appeal statement. Sorry, not the appeal statement, the affected party statement that claims that my 16 8-lumen lights adding up to 128 lumens is going to have this dramatic impact on the environment within Reston. We're going to affect the breeding habits of toads. We're going to upset nocturnal cycles. We're going to destroy the biophilic commitment that Reston makes to the environment and the night sky. Now, if you compare that nonsense to the 50,000 lumens that were added on the previous slide, it doesn't make sense. Now, the other thing I'll point to here is that on the board at the time that this was being discussed back in 2010, 2011, Linda Holkauer's ex-husband was on the board at that time. So I think Linda may or may not have been aware of the impact of updating that standard. But certainly if we move forward to 2019, Bill Wendt, treasurer, John Wilson was a signer of the affected party statement. Roseanne Sullivan, the former secretary of our association, also signed on as part of the affected party group on behalf of the whole community. They were perfectly aware that the bulbs that they were added to our configuration were 800 lumen LED bulbs. So, you know, for somebody, if they wanted to argue that they weren't aware of this, it frankly doesn't pass the the test. Sorry, next slide. So we come to what I believe is to be the real crux of the matter here, is that, you know, magically, after having 20 mushroom lights on our property for 6 years with 0 complaints, something triggered the board to decide to send us a notice of violation complaining about our non-compliance with the Reston guideline for decorative lighting. Now, Cam and team very graciously came and did a meet and greet in our community. And one of the things that was suggested and recommended was that in the case of enforcement, especially for Reston cluster guidelines, is to not to try and enforce them ourselves, but to rely on the covenants team to do the enforcement. This board totally ignored that guidance and decided to send us a notice of violation in June of last year, to which we complied. We removed 14 of the old lights and came down to 6. And we remained in that state until December of 2022, which is when we were starting to consider putting in the application. If you look at the order history and the background information beyond these slides, it's got the order dates from when we made those orders. Now, the other thing I'll point to is that Linda argued vehemently that these types of decorative lights are not necessary. She used the word, they're not necessary, what's the purpose, on several occasions. So I would like to ask the question is, what is the purpose of Linda's decorative lights? She has mushroom lights in the front of her property. She's got an uplight in the rear of her property. And the Wilsons, 2 people that John was on the board formerly, Doreen's on the board now, both have signed on as affected parties or signed on to the appeal statement. Why are their lights necessary and mine aren't? What I put it to you is that what's happening here is you're being embroiled in a internal dispute, and you know, these people are basically wasting your time and wasting my time. Now, I pointed out to the board, and they mentioned it in their appeal statement, I believe. It might even be in the affected party statement, that I had accused them and I was threatening them with a lawsuit on selective enforcement. That is complete nonsense. It's the complete opposite. I've been trying to prevent somebody taking us on for grounds of selective enforcement, because if I wanted to, this is a clear case of selective enforcement. There was only one property that had a notice of violation related to decorative lighting, and that was ours. I've pointed out multiple violations in terms of cluster design guidelines and our cluster design standards, the Newport cluster design standards, of which multiple properties are in violation. I have actually been working with the covenants team, and I think Cam, Megan and Richard would attest to this. I've been trying to update our design standards so more of our members come into compliance with an updated standard. It's not to take people on for violations. It's actually to implement what would be de facto standards, because people have got black house numbers. Next slide, please. So again, looking at material impact, and I'm questioning the timeline here. So what you're seeing here is the top line of a newsletter, community newsletter that Linda Holkauer and I created in September of 2020. I did the design of the newsletter. I created a lot of the content of the newsletter. I published the newsletter, distributed the newsletter, and received several compliments from Linda Holkauer herself as to the level of my creativity and the great job I'd done. These 2 photographs were in that newsletter, and they still remain on our website. If you look at that photograph on the right, you will see 6 of the 20 mushroom lights that used to be there. If you look at the new design, there are 3. So can somebody explain to me how, when we had 20 mushroom lights, 6 in this very area, and it didn't create a material impact, but suddenly our 16 8-lumen, 128 lumen total mushroom lights do? Again, questioning what they put in their their appeal statement regarding the lies I purportedly told to the DRB panel and that I told to you guys, is these are not Harlow lamps. These are a different brand and style altogether. So, the Harlow lights weren't put in place until September and December of 2022. And I mentioned before about the lamps obscuring plantings. Next slide, please. And these are more photographs in the December timeframe. And I think if you see that, the one on the left, you can see there are 2 lamps there. That was pre-DRB panel approval. And then if you look in the April picture, there are 3 lamps, because that was the redistribution of lamps that we did to comply with the DRB panel's recommendation that we distribute the lights evenly around our property. And we complied with that very excellent suggestion. And I could talk about the string lights. I mean, maybe if we need to talk about string lights, I'll talk about string lights, but for now, I'll leave that.
Well, that was actually gonna be one of my questions. So I just want to get to what we're here to review. And so we have 16 mushroom lights, and we have, there's 2 sets of string lights, is that, or 4 sets of string lights? I was trying to figure out how many you're looking to get approved.
I'm not. No, the string lights aren't part of this.
They're not part of it. Okay.
No, they're not part of it. As Brian asked the question last meeting, the string lights aren't part of this application. They were never intended to be. In fact, I had a conversation with Cam on December the 20th, and I asked him, because I wasn't sure of what the behavior of this board was going to be. So I actually asked him whether I should include the string lights in the application. And I don't want to put words in Cam's mouth. What I will say is that I took from our discussion that I should leave the design as it was, because I didn't want to go back and have to get signatures from 3 neighbors. And the decision to replace the string lights was taken after we'd drafted our application. I mean, if they were meant to be in the design, they would have been in the design.
Gotcha. Okay. I just wanted to. So we're looking at 16 lights, correct?
Correct.
16 mushroom lights that are each about 8 lumens apiece.
Exactly. And actually,
they're about 2,700 Kelvin, 3,000 Kelvin. It appears from the pictures, color temperature wise.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. So what I would like to do is just move to hear from the affected parties, and then we can come back and you can rebut to anything they may have to say, and then we can ask you any questions. But ultimately, we're here to look at the lights, and the effect. The reason why we deferred it was to make sure that they weren't affecting other people's properties. And I think some of us went out there, some of us have seen the updated pictures, and I think that's ultimately our guidelines do allow us to go more than 6. We like to also, but we have to see what impact those are going to make on adjacent properties, and that is essentially why it was deferred. So
exactly. Actually, if I can say just one more thing, Michael,
yep.
What we did do is, rather than, as Linda said, somehow I'm tricky and that I was going to go out and turn down the lights from 14 to 8 to fool you guys. What we actually did is we switched on the building attached lights at the rear of our property, both 2 800 lumen bulbs, and we gave up doing that for a couple of days because they have a material impact on the inside of our property. So we don't switch on our external lights at all at the back because they're a damn nuisance. And I should imagine they're create glare and there'd be a nuisance to anybody else. So if you did, when you came and did your look-see, you saw the two deck lights on, you probably understand how much glare they give off.
Yeah, no, I noticed that is, all of the building lights in all of the pictures are actually extremely bright
Exactly.
from what I've seen. But
Exactly.
that's just and so anyways, we're not looking at the front lights. Unfortunately, it's not part of this application, but it is an impact obviously that you have brought up to kind of, there is other light pollution that is happening already. So let me hear from the affected parties, and then we'll come back and talk with you. Okay.
Okay.
So staff, do we have the affected parties on? And can we, just a reminder, affected parties, you have 3 minutes. If you're an individual, if you're representing a group, you have 5 minutes to state your case. I'd love to keep it just about design guidelines. I'm not here to adjudicate cluster issues. I'm here to look at design guidelines. So please kind of keep that into effect. I'm not a judge. I'm simply a volunteer like everybody else here on the panel. So LaShonda, do you have who it is?
Yes, we have Linda. You're unmuted.
Hi, I was just curious about Ian's time restraints. Did he only have 3 minutes?
No, ma'am.
No, he's the
He's
applicant.
allowed
He
to
doesn't have
speak
a
as
time
long as he
restraint.
wants, and I have 5 minutes to respond to all of that? Really?
Correct. Once you appeal the decision and you're the appellant, you have as long as you want. But as the affected party, you only have 3 minutes or 5 minutes if you're in a group. That's just our guidelines.
So I prepared something to say, but I will skip that for the moment because I would like to directly respond to several of the things that Ian has pointed out. The first thing is the brightness of the lumens of our porch and deck lights. And thanks to Ian, I realized that he is right, that I was the one that researched to replace the light fixtures. When we moved in, a lot of them were non-functional, the old ones. So I was set with that task. I chose according to aesthetics, what replicated the pre-existing lighting. I had no concept of lumens or reflective light. However, as more people had these, I noticed that there was a lot of intrusive lights coming into my house, and several other people felt the same way. But I wasn't aware that I could regulate or I had any power to change that. So I thank Ian for pointing that out. And subsequent to Ian pointing that out, we, as the cluster board, has decided that we are going to, at the next meeting, introduce the concept, because we're going to be doing lighting, and we want to discuss having restrictions on the amount of lumens that are coming out of the light fixtures. So what Ian was saying is that because the light fixtures are so bright, that he shouldn't have to worry about his light fixtures being bright and adding to that. And that's saying that 2 wrongs make a right, which is not true, because the aim of our board is really to reduce overall lighting and the imposition that it has on nature and on our neighbors. So if he is basing his request for approval on that there's already so much lighting, and he said, all over Reston. So what I wonder is why doesn't he say that there should be no lighting restrictions at all? Because based on his argument, why bother? And I really appreciate Ian so generously trying to educate the board on the way they're acting, because he seems to know better than you guys do. I've seen him comment about how you didn't do things correctly and all of that. And I question his, audacity to do that. So, all right. The reason why we did not have confidence in Ian to not be tricky is because he very arrogantly boasted about having lights that were not in violation for 6 years and the string lights for 4 years. 20 of the mushroom lights, 40 string lights. So I took a photograph, and maybe you guys can pull that up. I had a photograph that was taken, there it is. Okay, is that it? Yeah. So I happened to snap this photograph. It was right about the time, if not after, you had approved the lights. And this is not a good photograph at all. I mean, one I sent was much better, but I didn't go out intending to photograph this. I happened to be strolling by, and when I came around the corner, I was amazed at how bright the lights were. So I took a photograph of it, and there it is. That's better. So I decided to submit this because when I took this photo, it was at sunset, so it wasn't even dark yet. And I didn't include everything because I'm not a photographer and all that, but it appears to me that there's a lot of lighting there, especially in the front, on the side there. They're not apart, they're very close together. And of course, some of the things from that angle are not revealed. What else did I want to say? Okay, so let's see. Okay. Ian has touched on a lot of sensitive subjects, and he is invoking that there is kind of this unrest in our cluster, and that this is nothing that you guys should be included on. But
Excuse me, Linda.
What?
Pardon me. That is your time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Linda. Any other affected parties? Is RA an affected party on this one?
RA has not updated his affected party statement.
Okay. So we got it now?
No.
Okay. Anybody else then?
No other affected parties.
Okay. So anybody, I'm gonna go around the room and see if anyone has any questions for the applicant. And then we can discuss. Ultimately, I just want to remind everyone, we're looking at the 16 solar powered lights for aesthetics and light pollution. So Emily, do you have any thoughts?
I don't have any immediate thoughts about I guess, just the 16 solar powered lights. And the make and model of those was submitted with the application.
Yeah.
And no questions for me.
Mike?
Nothing for me, Michael. We've seen it before.
Brian?
I have no comments on the 16, mushroom lights. My question about this whole thing has been more about this string lights that were put up in the back. I know we've said they weren't part of the application, but I'm so confused on that because in photos we're still seeing the string lights. So I do think that they are part of an issue here. So that
unfortunately they're not part of the application. They're part of, to me, it's a separate issue that would need to be dealt with, whether it's covenants or something else. We don't have a string light guideline. So there's no way to look at those. They're also not part of the application in front of us. So we can't, in my opinion, we cannot look at those at this time without looking at it.
I hear you. And all I'll say is that I think that when we looked at the application originally, because I was on the original panel, it was about the 16 lights only. And that's why I keep bringing up the string lights, because we thought that the 16 mushroom lights were all we were talking about. And that's what the basis of the approval was on. So the string lights are above and beyond that, which is why I think, some of the affected parties are having issues. But
gotcha.
Anyways, that's
okay. Bruce, any questions or thoughts?
I have no questions about the 16 lights.
I don't either. I think ultimately the reason why it got peeled was and upheld, or not upheld, but kind of reversed, was we felt that there was new information on how bright this was polluting other, properties after. It's kind of tricky because the application was, kind of still ongoing. It's essentially because it was appealed. But I think that's ultimately what did it. I think after looking at it and seeing the 16 quantity, the location, the amount of screening that there is from vegetation, I think in this instance, it can be appropriate for this property. And it's not causing what mainly in that picture, that's being sent. If we go to the exhibit B, let's call it, that was sent in by the affected party, a lot of that light is all coming from windows and the front porch lights of places. And obviously there is some of the string light concern. We have string lights all over Reston. We don't have a guideline, something that we're dealing with, but what we do have is landscape lights. And I don't think landscape lights are causing any light pollution that's unnecessarily affecting anybody else. So I'll make a motion that we approve the application of the 16 lights in the location specified with the same parameters that we put on the original approval back in January of 2023, that they're evenly distributed throughout the applicant's entire property, with front, rear, and side elevations, and that they cannot all be installed along one elevation at one time. And I think this is not intended to set up for a precedent for decorative lighting within the Newport Cluster Homeowners Association, that they still need to submit an application if there's more than 6 lights to the DRB.
I'll second.
Michael, could I make one suggestion maybe on the motion? Is that we specify, I believe these lights have it was the option of the 8 lumen or 14 lumen. I know we've talked a lot that they are 8 lumen, but we include in the motion that they are set to the 8 lumens.
Yeah, I accept that motion or that amendment.
Agreed.
There's a motion, a second, an amendment, and then an exception of the amendment. So does everyone, any other thoughts? All right, so all those in favor say aye.
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 Any against? Motion passes. All right. Thank you, guys. Moving on to application. Oh no, we don't have any more applications. Just agenda item H. Shonda, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, thank you. So bringing this back, it was deferred for me to send revisions to the design guidelines in additions to condominiums for DRB feedback on multiple elements for cluster standards and single family homes. So I did get some feedback. Would you like me to go through each one or just address the feedback?
No, I would just address any of the feedback, I would say. I think I don't want to go line item by line item. If anyone else objects to that, speak up. But I think let's just look at the feedback and then if anyone has any other additional questions, please speak up.
Sure. So if we go to page 5, this is a design guideline for ground level decks for single family homes and cluster standards. For clusters. I did have some feedback from Brian for both of clusters and single family detached homes about the maximum height versus I guess the privacy fence being mounted to a railing. Brian,
feel free to tell me this is a moot point. I just feel like when I've been walking around, I've seen people put up private, more opaque privacy screens on top of the railing.
Mhm.
So of course that just makes it much higher. So I just wanted to raise the question, but tell me if it's not a consideration.
No, I would like to get the board's input on it. So it does say that the dimensions may not exceed 6 feet from whatever it's mounted to. So if it should say something, or if anybody has any other feedback
I would say it's 6 feet from the surface of the deck.
from the surface of the deck.
Yeah, just because if you interpret it that way, 6 feet from the surface of what it's mounted to, you know, Brian's right. You could add a 6-foot privacy fence on top of a 3-foot railing, and then all of a sudden it's 9 feet tall. So,
Gotcha.
if
I
could
just
add-
want to, oh, go ahead.
If I could add to that, keep in mind, this is going to be inclusive of, we're on clusters, correct, LaShonda?
Right now I'm on single families. Clusters are on page 10.
Okay.
Similar wording.
So it has similar wording, and so you want to be mindful of the fact that if you are establishing the 6-foot requirement from the floorboard, or the walking surface is probably how you would want to word it, the walking surface, that would then negate staff to review anything that is above 6 feet. And so thinking about single family homes, and in some situations, we've always allowed single family homes to have some more flexibility, especially when you talk about ground level decks. So if you wanted to do a differential between single family and cluster, now would be the time to suggest that, if you were open to that idea.
Explain a scenario where someone would need higher than 6 feet from the deck. The deck already is going to be could be 6 inches, could be 2 feet off the ground, and still be considered a ground level deck, right? I don't know what's our max height of a ground level deck. 18 inches. Sorry, it's right there.
Yep.
18
Right.
inches. So
I'm thinking of a scenario where there is a single family home that a row of single family homes that go downgrade, and the people want privacy, and they may want that 7 or 8 foot screening on the side of their house. And if their deck and house size permits that type of installation, it would be more appropriate to have that 2-foot differential built into the design guideline at staff review, as opposed to getting a greater review simply because you're going a foot or two over because of where your location is in the home type. Now, if the DRB doesn't want to, because really you're just talking about semantics of review level at that point. So it's really up to
Yeah. I'm fine with leaving it with the 6 feet. And I only say that because I feel like those are unique circumstances that maybe do need to have a panel look at it, or at least a consultation. Where does it bump it to? Consultation or panel?
The next level would be con or panel, either or.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's okay, because I think those are unique circumstances, Cam, that maybe, because if everyone starts building 7-foot walls on their fences, it's going to be, 7-foot walls on their decks. I don't know. I think it's case by case. I think 6 is very in lining with our fence standard, so it's very similar. So I think that limit, I think, is good. And if somebody does have a unique circumstance, then they can go to a panel or a con to review it.
Sounds good.
All right. And then if we go down to page 45, patios and walkways. I have a comment from Emily about 24 inches above the patio or 24 inches above the surrounding grade. Could we have a raised patio with a wall, and from the patio face, the wall would only be 12 feet, but from the ground, it would be 48 feet?
Yes, so I just have concerns about the wording with this. Because like I said, if you say we just need to determine on what it is, if it's from grade, or if we're okay with people having seat walls that are on top of retaining walls, essentially.
Yeah, I think we do the same thing where we use that term that Cam was using, the walking surface. I think is a good way to describe it.
Walkways and patios to include a fixed seat wall no more than 24 inches in height above the walking surface.
Yeah, and that way, if they happen to be on a retaining wall, that just is the factor of the site, and maybe it is 60 inches above the grade on the outside, but that at that point, staff is going to look at it and make sure that that wall meets our guidelines, whether it's stone veneered or it's timber or whatever it may be. But I think that's a good. I think using that walking surface term, I think is a good idea, Emily.
Yeah, I think so. Also, just a line of simply configure. Yeah, okay. Because I mean, but okay, on that point, if we say it should be set within the natural contours of the ground for walkways and not for patios anymore, the green is what we're trying to propose. Yes.
Well, no, that's a separate.
Oh, these are separate line items. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, the patios being able to stick up above grade. I just know that we've already, like in just my brief time, we've already encountered this of people thinking that patios aren't allowed to be more than 8 inches above grade or whatever the case may be. So there's clearly some lack of clarity with this. But I think 24 inches above the walking surface would be sufficient for patios.
Yeah, and that's typically for the seat wall, right? It's not necessary for anything else. So it's if it is a walkway, most walkways, to me, would not have a seat wall.
Right. No, I don't think that that's necessary. Although, should it say walkways and patios may include a fixed seat wall instead of to include? Makes it sound like you're mandating.
Which may include which include a seat wall. I don't know. Yeah, may or which. So some different word than two.
Yeah, that's fine. I can.
Walkways and patios that include fixed seat walls be no more than 24 inches in height.
Okay. And those were the main things. I did have some administrative changes as far as wording of things that Brian sent. So all of those things have been changed, but I didn't get any other feedback.
Okay.
I didn't receive any other feedback. So I was just wondering, was everybody okay with it? Do you have anything else that you would like to discuss?
Does anyone else have any other thoughts?
Michael, I think you alluded to it in the last case, but are we working on something for these string lights are becoming quite a topic of discussion? Is that getting worked into the guidelines?
I don't currently have anything for string lights, but we can definitely add that to the next cycle.
I think it's a can of worms that I don't know if we can control it. To be perfectly honest, I don't know. I think Cam, didn't you guys take a stab at trying to write a guideline for them?
We did, and it became extremely difficult because there's just so many different lights out there, and it would basically string lights are the new Ring doorbell video cameras. They're like all the rage. Everyone wants the lights. No one wants to submit an application for it. No one thinks it's an inconvenience, but ultimately, as we know, Reston likes our dark skies. And so whatever guideline could be created would be extremely vague up to a point where we could, there's no way to avoid it getting in front of the DRB if there's a complaint, essentially.
And I that's, I think, part of the issue is that, I see them, they're installed in the backyard, they're installed in the front yard, they're installed inside yards. I mean, some are bright, some are not bright, some are on all night, some are not on all night, some are on, so it's such a, to me, it's like a decorative light. Like we don't regulate, as an example, we don't regulate holiday lights. My wife tells me I got to take them down by January 15th. I like to leave them up till, February 15th. I think they're winter lights, but it's kind of a similar argument, right? And so that's where I think it'd be really tough, really tough to tackle that. And I can see why Cam maybe struggled with trying to create a guideline. Because Cam, do we have a decorative light, like a temporary, a temporary light guideline, just like we have temporary pavilions, shade structures, things like that?
We do have a lighting design guideline for decorative lights, but it doesn't speak to.
But it's not like temporary lights. I mean, maybe that's a way we could look at it, is word it very similarly to like the temporary shade structures that we have. The way that, I mean, I know I argued with that guideline anyways. I thought it was kind of silly because once again, it was kind of unenforceable, because who's going to come get an application for a temporary structure? So it's a very similar situation, I guess, would be part of the issue. I think the only thing we really have to stand on is if it's causing light pollution to other people's homes and they're complaining, then I think we can take action. Correct, Cam?
Yes, so the DRB can always request verification, do a site visit as you have done tonight.
Well, I think that happened with another property, which I don't think it's come back yet, but I remember there was a very thorough
property on Owl's Cove.
Yeah, very thorough application of the light pollution it was causing on the neighboring property.
Correct.
So similar situation. So Brian, I think that's our best way to cover us, essentially, is to not have a guideline, and if there's complaints, we can then use our lighting standards at that point. Any other thoughts, comments? Well, LaShonda, do you need us to make a motion on this?
I do. I'd need a motion for the review level revisions, as well as the addition of condo design guidelines.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? No? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Bruce raised his hand. Brian raised his hand. So I think we're good. Motion passes 5-0. Good work,
Thank
LaShonda. I'm
you.
sure that was
Thank you, LaShonda.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm sure. I don't know if this
awesome
was
job,
just
LaShonda.
Thank you.
I don't know if this was just you or if it was team members involved, but I'm sure it was not fun.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Tonight, the only other thing I wanted to bring up, and you guys tell me if I'm crazy, who would be interested in full board going back to in person? I think a pro of it would be a lot of, how should I put it, disgruntled neighbors and applications would not be as common, because people are a little bit more less likely to confront in person. And I think it would help us review things necessarily better in person. And also, I just kind of like meeting in person. So just throwing it out there as an option. I know we've kind of tabled it, and I think panel meetings are great, digitally, virtually, whatever you want to call it, but the full board meetings, I like to throw it out there every so often and see what the interest is. Any thoughts, comments?
I'm in the middle on that, Michael. I'm not fussy either way on it, quite frankly. But I think given the difficulty we had grabbing quorum at the beginning of this thing, tonight probably might have been a bust,
Well, we had vacations. I think one thing we need to do is people need to get better at, we need to make sure we tell staff when we're going to be on vacation.
Fair point.
Or, I know obviously you guys, there's always work stuff that's going to come up. Understand that. But I don't know. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm old school in the sense that I was on the board pre-COVID and I think it was probably just Bruce and I at that point. I just think the full board meetings work really well in person. I don't know, Bruce, if you have a thought on it, but I just feel like we see more of these like argument neighbor things that I have to act like a judge, and I don't remember ever having to deal. I never was chair in person, but like Richard never had to deal with. We didn't deal with any of those style of applications because people don't do that face to face to each other. Very rarely. Some people do, but
Michael, let me ask a question about what you have in mind. Would it be exclusively in person, so people wouldn't have the option? And I'm not arguing. I just want to know what you have in mind.
No, I think it'd be the same way that the Reston board of directors meets, where they have a hybrid model.
They do have a hybrid. Okay.
And Cam maybe can speak on it more, but I know there was the board of directors meeting that I was attending that I didn't get to actually speak at because they were in legal session for like 6 hours. But I do believe it is a hybrid model, correct, Cam?
Yes, the board at their last board meeting has made a decision to have all of their board meetings be hybrid.
So and what I understood previously, that was technical challenges to that. So that's what I wanted. So when I'm understanding it now, the board could do it. We believe we could do it. Is that correct? Yeah.
It still has its pros and cons, of course, but the board seems to be very functional with it. I will also say that the hybrid meetings require a significant amount of staff to make sure that there's no issues. Because as we remember, when there's a hybrid meeting and something happens, participants that are online still need to be able to participate. So basically the meeting ends if there's any issue. That's still a real live concern.
Just depends. What do you mean? Clarify what that means.
Like if a homeowner decides to attend hybrid virtually and you're in person and there's a technical difficulty from our end, so the internet goes out or there's a storm that night or something, the in-person, the meeting ends. There is no meeting that evening because you can't continue without letting the people who are virtually attending participate.
Couldn't you just defer their application?
I believe that would be the case, but I don't think that the meeting itself could continue. Tony, you let me know if I'm mistaken.
So if the meeting is noticed as a hybrid and suddenly it becomes solely in person, then you have a notice issue.
Well, what if we notice it as fully in person, but then allow somebody who maybe can't make it in person to be virtual?
I don't think we permit that for members. Cam, do we permit call-ins, or did we permit call-ins?
Because I feel like I'm trying to think back.
You're gonna laugh. I've never had an in-person meeting since I've been at our.
Because I mean, the thing is that when we had the in-person meetings, like you had to sign in if you were attending the meeting. There was like a little clipboard. If you were an affected party, but then you also could just be a listener, right? And then I guess to me, if you're a registered affected party, and let's say by chance we lose internet, couldn't we theoretically call them and they still get to participate? Or I understand it's a logistical issue, but has the board, I guess the board of directors doesn't necessarily, they're not reviewing applications. And so if a member drops off, it doesn't really matter. Is that the pro that they have against us?
Essentially, their member participation is at the beginning with member comments, and then it basically ends, and it's just the board that's conducting the business.
Okay. I'm to be frank, I'm tired of being a judge. I'm not like tonight. Like I'm just being real. At we're dealing with people who are willing to, I don't think they'll do this face to face. I'm just being blunt about it. To actually physically drive to a facility and face your basically accuser or whatever they want to consider it, I don't think it's going to happen as much. I'm tired of dealing with it. So, and I also think bigger applications are better reviewed in person. So just keep everybody think on it. Maybe I'll send out an email with bullet points of why I think it's good, and then we can go from there. So
I think it may be good if you say, hey, we're planning on doing this starting in September or something like that, and let it already get to the summer. Doing virtual still.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah. No, I agree. I'll give it time for people to, understand the calendars. And I obviously don't want to also jeopardize their own membership by doing it, but people can't make, if they can't make the meetings in person, on our own, board members, I don't want to make it an inconvenience as well. But luckily we all live in Reston, and the headquarters is right in the middle. So it's not like it's that far out of the way. Okay. Well, keep it in thought, and then we'll go from there.
Awesome. Whatever you all decide that you'd like to do, just remember that we do need at least 2 months notice.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
And then one last thing, Michael. If you want to give it another shot at the board meeting on Thursday, I am hopefully finally presenting resolution 8 and 10.
Okay.
So if there's any DRB member that wants to join me, you are more than welcome to attend. If you want to, I can text you right before. I have been promised that the people who are there to discuss will be somewhat first on the agenda. Where exactly and how long, I'm not entirely clear on that, but if you're interested, I'm happy to text.
Text me. What time does the meeting start again? 7?
Board meetings start at 6:30.
6:30. Okay. Yeah.
For the uninitiated, what is that?
To what part, Emily?
The resolution 9 and 10. I'm sorry, I don't know if that's in my sphere of knowledge.
So resolution 8 reviews the DRB application process, and resolution 10 reviews the affected party process. And so we've made some suggested changes to improve those two processes.
Yeah, so those were things we talked about a couple board meetings ago. And then last month I was supposed to just, we wrote that letter, we all approved unanimously via email that basically gave our support on the wording that we were looking for. I think it was something with like moving from 14 days to 10 business days, something to that effect.
Yes. No, I recall. I just didn't know the numerical, didn't know it by its name.
Yeah. Sam, just text me again. I'm still solo parenting that day. I don't have a babysitter lined up, so just let me know. And if he's already down, then I can do it. If he's not, then I'll tell you. Okay. But if it drags on for an hour and a half, I'll be good.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, thank you guys. All right, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. Any second?
Second.
I'll second that.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 All right. Thank you guys. Thank you, staff, as always.
Have a good evening.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good night.